One of the biggest things about Costa Rica is to get to know the local people, because we're in areas where it's hard to get to, so it makes it quite unique adventure experiences for people to enjoy and something that they will never forget. My name is Chris. I am a guide in Costa Rica. I was born and raised here in Costa Rica. I've guided for about 12 years, all the way from Canada, the US, but most of my work is here in Costa Rica, in Nicaragua, and in Panama. I'm also a survival techniques instructor, so we do some jungle courses, and I am a very passionate bikepacker. So I have done many trips around the world, a lot of biking and bikepacking in Central America, but also in Canada. So a few times with my dad, I've crossed Canada on bicycle. We have ridden border to border in the US, and we're always looking for a new biking or bikepacking adventure. How I got started into this business, it was because of my dad. So my dad has been a guide for about 35 years, mostly in Costa Rica. And so when I was growing up, it was always, all I wanted to do was to go on a trip with my dad or to go on a trip with some of the other guides. And I started as an assistant guide when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And then someone told me that I could get paid, and I thought that was really cool. So I got more and more involved. And then when I finished high school, I went to Canada, did a 2-year program in Canada to be a certified guide, but Canada's too cold. So I had to come back to Costa Rica, and I've been around ever since. My dad is originally from Canada. That's important to mention. He came to Costa Rica around 35 years ago. So what we will cover in this presentation very quickly, why Costa Rica, what makes our country so interested in to come and visit. We will focus more on the coast to coast challenge tour, some of the flora and fauna that you can see on the trip, and then some essential information for people who are really interested in doing the trip. Why Costa Rica? Why not? It's the best place to come and do adventure traveling. We're a tiny country. We do have a lot to offer. Costa Rica, 25% of our territory is protected, and it's focused into ecotourism. So this 25% of the territory is protected on national parks, forest reserves, indigenous reserves. So no one can buy it. No one can develop anything. And this is all focused for ecotourism. For me personally, I've had the chance, luckily, to live in other places in the world. I always end up coming home. Just great weather, a lot to offer. It's hard to find a place in the world where you can be in the city in the morning, go up to the mountains when you get out of the Central Valley, and then in a couple of hours you are on the beach. A couple of times, because I'm always traveling around the country and looking for new routes, a couple of times I have seen both coasts in one day, which is quite rare to do. One of the most important things, and one thing that I always tell people, foreigners and tourists, is our local people. Locals, Costa Ricans, or ticos, how we are called, are crazy to show our country. Anywhere you go in the country, rural areas, small towns, people want to chat to you. People want to show you their country. They'll give you food, they'll give you coffee. They want you to try things that you've never experienced before. For me, that's one of the biggest things about Costa Rica, is to get to know the local people in here. So the Coast to Coast Challenge, we'll jump into the trip. But first of all, we'll talk a little bit of how it got started. Like I said, my dad has been a guide for about 35 years. He started the Coast to Coast trip. He was the one who designed the very first one in the early 90s. It's funny because he's a Canadian that had just arrived to the country. My dad has a really cool story on how on his 5th or 6th day in the country, he was in San Jose, right in the center of the country, and he wanted to go and explore the Pacific coast. So he asked someone that he had met on a hotel, a Costa Rican, if he wanted to join him to go and see the coast just for the day. And so they did. They drove early in the morning, went to the beach, spent the day there. And then on the way back, my father wanted to try a different route to come back to San Jose. And he went through the first range of mountains that goes over the Pacific coast. And he was crazy. It took them about 8 or 9 hours on a motorcycle. And it was a full-on experience. When they were able to get out of the mountain range and stop at a little restaurant, the Costa Rican, within 20 minutes, had 15 people around their table. And he was telling the story of what an amazing experience it was. A little tough, but it was a great experience. I think that's kind of how my dad's idea was born, on how he could, or we could, supply adventure experiences for people to enjoy, and hopefully something that they will never forget. And here I have a little video that just shows a little bit of what the coast-to-coast trip is. It shows a little bit of the biking and the hiking and some of the areas that the trip goes through. It's we know exactly when the first coast-to-coast trip started, because it was the day my younger brother was born. So that was the first commercial trip. And my dad remembers that early in the morning, he was setting the brand new bike rack that he got for the trip, and they were setting all the bikes, and they called him. My dad went to the hospital, saw my younger brother for the first time, and then went back and started the trip. So we know that next year, July 2024, is going to be the first, the 30th coast-to-coast trip. So that's pretty cool, and we're really looking forward for that one. So this is the trip. This is the coast-to-coast trip, or coast-to-coast challenge. This map shows a little bit of where in the country you're going through. So the trip starts here on the Pacific coast in Playa Quepos, and we kind of divide the trip in 3 sections. So we have the first section that is cycling and hiking to the Continental Divide, which is around this area over here, then down into the central valley of the country, into the Pacuare River, where we do the whitewater rafting, and then the last section to get to the end. On here, you can see a little profile of how it looks, and the activities and the names of the towns that we're going through as it goes on. So the trip, it's a full-on trip. We pick you up in San Jose at the airport, drive you to the hotel in San Jose, and then the very next day we drive to the Pacific coast. So the first day we go to Quepos, which is right next to the Manuel Antonio National Park. This is a very popular place for tourists. This is one of really nice beaches, but also lots of wildlife, so it's very popular. And from there on, we say goodbye to tourists. You don't see many tourists as the trip goes on, because we are in areas where it's hard to get to, so it makes it quite unique. The morning of the 3rd day of the trip, that's when we start. So we just pop over to the coast, take a quick picture to show that we started in the Pacific, and the adventure begins over there. First section of the trip is from the tropical dry forest near the coast on the Pacific, the Continental Divide. So the Continental Divide, for those of you who don't know, is this line. It's not necessarily the highest point, but it's this line that divides both coasts. The first section is a combination of cycling and hiking to this Continental Divide. It takes 3 days to get there. We like the name. It's the Coast to Coast Challenge. We encourage people to finish all activities, and we always make sure that we give people enough time to finish, and so that they can do it at their own pace. Stop whenever you need to, drink lots of water, eat whenever you need, lots of pictures. But we do push you. I have a good story from a trip maybe 4 or 5 years ago. On the very first day, where we do the cycling, which is kind of a warm-up cycling, and then we switch to hiking, and this hike is tough. It's quite hilly. At the start of this hike, I had this person who approached me and said, "Chris, I'm really sorry, but I can't do this. This trip is not for me. So I would like to go back, and I just want to stay in a hotel on the beach. And don't worry about it. I'll pay for all the extras. I know that this is my fault. I didn't say anything at the beginning, kept walking for a little bit, and then I just told him, let's just focus on the next rest stop, which is going to be a really nice creek. You can cool down. And this person was able to get to the creek. And at the creek, I told him, let's just go to the first campsite and we'll decide from there. And we got to the first campsite. And the next day was just to get to the lunch stop and then to the next campsite. And he was able to finish the entire trip without getting into a vehicle. So that's more or less what we're looking for. We want people to finish the trip, obviously to enjoy it in a safe way, but there is a really nice sense of accomplishment every day. And of course, at the end, when we finish. All along the route, we do lots of stops to talk about the country, to talk about Costa Rica, to enjoy the views, to learn about its history. So all of this is very important and also gives people a little bit of a rest. This picture shows a little bit of those first few days of the trip, the combination of the forest on the right side of the picture, that river and lots of rivers and creeks that we go through, like that one right there in the middle. And then the left side is all coffee plantations. And actually the plants that you see right in front there are coffee plants. This is how coffee looks when the workers have picked through it. Very important product in the country, but also very important for the Costa Rican history. When the country started exporting coffee, it was all we did for many years. And so it was like the base of the economy for the country. The second part of the trip is from the Central Valley, or after the Continental divide, going into the Central Valley and then into the Pacuare River. This section starts with the toughest day of the trip for sure, which is the day that we have to climb a 12-kilometer hill. And it's quite a tough cycling day where we tackle hills, some single tracks. So actually that picture shows the mud and the tires after this single track section. But again, we give people lots of time and we make sure that people can do it. So on this first hill, which is a really long hill on the trip, we let people start at different times. And so if you think you're going to be a little bit slower, you can start earlier. And like that, you don't have the pressure. It's all controlled with our support vehicle and staff. And then when we get to the single track section, it's pretty cool because you have the choice of either, if you like single track and you want to do it, you can go on the bike. But if you just don't feel comfortable enough to do stuff like that, there's the option of just hiking the section. And then like that, you don't miss any part of the trip. We try to stay off traffic as much as we can. We do go through some towns and so every once in a while we have to go through, but this is how it looks normally. And then the daily routine for the entire trip is, like I said, it's quite laid back. We start early. We have, of course, coffee in the mornings and then breakfast, but we do early starts so we can allow people lots of time so they can finish the activities. But also, if we arrive early to the campsite or to the accommodations, they have time to relax and rest. At the end of this second section, we get to the Pacuare River. The Pacuare River is the best whitewater rafting river in the country, and it's also on the top 5 in the world. It's just amazing, not only because of the rapids that we are going through, but also because of the scenery. It's amazing. I've run this river probably 300 times, but it's still quite amazing to go down the river. And while you're paddling, just, to see a blue morpho going by is quite special. We have 2 days of whitewater rafting. We have a rest day in between where we stay at El Nido del Tigre campsite, which is a set campsite right on the river. This place has no electricity, no Wi-Fi, but it's just the perfect place to have this rest day and relax and just think about the adventure that you're having and just power up for the next few days. On the second day of whitewater rafting, we tackle bigger rapids. So on day 1, we do class 2s and class 3s. This is very good for people that have never done rafting before because they get used to the river, they get used to the commands. And then on the second day, we tackle bigger rapids. The first section is about 9 kilometers and the second section is about 25 kilometers. For the final part of the trip, our final stretch that goes to the Caribbean coast, we do a day of cycling and then the last paddle to get to the coast. The cycle goes along the river, like you can see on this picture, quite flat, quite easy. And then we jump on kayaks and we do the last paddle to the Caribbean Sea. Actually, on this paddle, we go through some really nice but quite wild primary forest. There are no roads. There's no other way to get to the end other than to paddle there. There's no roads, and it's quite amazing. And then at the end, we get to the mouth of the river. We do a little celebratory and final picture to prove that we went coast to coast. And after that, we jump on a motorboat, and this motorboat takes us out, and then a quick transfer to get to the South Caribbean beaches of the country, where we spend an afternoon and the next morning just to relax and enjoy the beach before we do our final transfer back to San Jose. If people have time, I often recommend for them to book 1 or 2 extra nights here so that you can enjoy the coast and rest from the challenge, which is very important. Flora and fauna is quite amazing. First of all, because we're going coast to coast, but we're also going through different environments. As we start at sea level, we go up to 2,400 meters. Everything is changing along the way. And Costa Rica has just so much to offer. We hold 5% of the world's biodiversity. We have about 7% of the bird life population, which is quite amazing. And just to put it into perspective, Costa Rica has more bird life than all of the US and Canada together. So quite amazing. We have 10,000 tropical plants, 1,200 types of orchids, and we are home of a few species that are endangered species like the macaws and the green turtles and the leatherback turtles. And actually the macaws is quite amazing because I remember when I was really young, I remember seeing macaws, and then the population went down, and for years you couldn't see macaws. But now in the last 5 or 6 years, the population is just growing like crazy, and you can see them in here. In this picture, we have the sloth on the left side and the toucan. These two are, I would say, we can almost promise you that you will see these if you do the trip. And then, along the trip, our guides and our staff, we do know the country quite well. We know its wildlife, and we are always very interested on showing it to you. Big part of the trip is to, every time there is a chance, to stop and look at it, like this guy. So this is a very relaxed howler monkey on nut pine. Some essential information for people who want to do the trip. Food. All of the staff that you have on the trip, we do all the cooking. We are good cooks, we promise. One very important part of every tour is food. Most of the meals on the trip are included because we're in the middle of nowhere. And so we buy food and we cook food as the trip goes on. So it's always fresh food. We are very used to dietary restrictions. That part is no problem. And then always at the end of every day, we have a chance to have a drink, some beer, some wine. And if you're good to the guide, maybe we'll prepare some cocktails. But something just very important, just so you can relax at the end of the day and look back into it. The accommodations on the trip, there is a really good combination. There is a really good balance on the accommodations that we have. We have a hotel in San Jose for the first and last night, of course, and then the 2 nights when we are in the Pacific side and the Caribbean side, we have a hotel on each side. And then while we're doing the activities and while we're crossing the country, we have a really good balance. So we have 2 nights of camping on community centers in towns that are in the middle of nowhere. These are really cool because the towns are they're in the middle of nowhere and not a lot of people go by. They're always happy to see tourists and to share with tourists. 2 of the bigger towns that we go by, we stay in small hotels and cabins that are very comfortable. And then towards the end of the trip, we have 3 nights on set campsites. These are campsites that are near the Pacuare River. They're just very comfortable. This picture over here is of one of the first set campsites. So you can see it's camping, but much more comfortable. This is one of the cabins in one of the bigger towns that we go by, quite unique. And these are places that we've used for many, many years. And so we have a special relationship with the owners. These are all family businesses, and we're happy that we can continue to use them all the time. Very important, all of the accommodations will have showers, flush toilets, and a roof for when we have dinner. So it's all very, very comfortable, actually. Equipment along the trip is all provided, of course. So for the paddling activities, we have all the kayaks and everything that you need. Bikes are supplied. These bikes get serviced and checked by certified mechanics. We do ask you to bring your own helmet, and we encourage you to bring if you have your own saddle and pedals, but it's not necessary. And of course, all the camping equipment that you need, we provide all of that, and we transport all of that. So you just, show up at the airport, basically. One of the big questions, am I fit enough for the trip? For some people, this is something, they hear about the trip and they look at it and they think, I don't know if I can do the trip. We always say, as long as you're reasonably fit and you know how to ride a bike, you can do the trip. As long as you're happy and you have a positive mind, you'll be able to finish the trip. It is a challenge. We are looking so that you have to work for it, but very, very doable. I remember a few years ago, I had this trip where I had this family. It was a family of 4, and the wife came to me and early in the morning of the first day, and she said, "Chris, I'm just here because my kids and my husband wanted to do this trip, and they're fit, but I'm just gonna be sitting on the support vehicle all day." It was amazing because she was like that at the beginning. She was quite positive, and she just started with the first biking section and then the hiking, and she was able to do the entire trip. She did ask if she could get on the vehicle, the support vehicle, a couple of times, and I was like, just go another 2 kilometers. And she was able to finish the entire trip. And I remember at the end, after the last paddle, when we got to the Caribbean Sea, she gave me a big hug, and she was so happy that she was able to finish the day. And those are the things that really, really stick to you as a guide. When people are able to accomplish this, they feel like they've achieved something really, really cool. So I think that's the main thing. That's it from me. We're waiting for more people to come and join us. This is a trip, like I said, it's been going for almost 30 years. It's an amazing trip, and we're sure that you're going to love it.